opening up the color palette for designers and giving you a lot more colors that you can use that will pass. Particularly for those poor, unfortunate companies that had orange in their color palette, and virtually nothing in the WCAG 2 algorithm would match, would pass if it had orange in it. So that was very difficult for a lot of companies, and this now addresses that problem. So we're very interested in getting more feedback from other researchers and to get the comments from designers as well.
Right.
Oh, and the other strong contenders were, let's see, audio description, pause, stop, hide, and language of environment, which we use to build up rough sections that never actually made it in. So those will be done and developed in a future draft.
Great. All right. Thanks, Jeanne.
Oh, and one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. We have a group working on error messages for the next draft. So if any of you are interested and would like to participate, we would love your input.
No, that's great. Error handling is one of those things that, impacts everyone, but I think it's always forgotten until the end, right?
Yes.
You think about it up front. Very good. Okay. All right. So I want to just, delve a little deeper into one of these. And again, I said, I like the clear words because I think from a UX standpoint, there's a lot of overlap there because, good writing, UX writing is becoming a thing now. And just, I think as UX folk, we've all seen examples of bad labels, bad text on web pages. And I think it's, for everyone, this is something that should be, it's a critical issue. So for clear words, so as we said, just going to go over an example here of how these guidelines are structured for this one. So the guideline here is use common clear words. So again, they want to make it very simple, very basic, understandable for all, regardless of what your role is, whether it's a project manager or a business person. Then the outcome, again, it seems pretty straightforward, using common and clear words in all contexts. So again, I'm sure the devil is in the details there, but I think as far as the outcome goes, I think that's pretty clear to me. And then I want to talk about the methods, because I think this is what I was talking about earlier a little bit when I was talking about user stories. So this method, this is on the website. You can see the URL there. So this is broken into different sections. Introduction. You can see there it talks about a summary. Clear words help create more accessible content for people with cognitive and learning disabilities. Use words or phrases that are most frequently used for the current context, unless it will result in a loss of meaning or clarity. And then another section they have are examples. So here they've added user stories, which I thought was really good. So this is one example. So as a user with a language impairment, learning disability and or a memory impairment, I want the language used to be clear and easy for me to understand so that I can understand the content. So again, if you think about agile development, user stories are part of that. And I think it's important when you're doing your user stories to think about users with disabilities. And they've also, if you go to this URL, you can see they have some related personas, which I think could be helpful in, when you're doing your persona work. I'm sure that they would love you took these and added them to your personas for your product. Caroline, a yoga teacher who has ADHD, and George, a user who works in a supermarket and has Down syndrome. So I think that's one thing when we talk about persona work, make sure that they're inclusive, and we do include people with disabilities in our persona work. All right, so now I'm going to hand it over to Jeanne, and Jeanne is going to walk us through the testing approach for WCAG 3. So Jeanne, I'll just advance the slides when you're ready. So
Great. So this took us 2 years to get this. So and it's still, unfortunately, it's still rather sketchy. We're working on the details, and we've been getting a lot of very good feedback, very useful feedback from people commenting on the draft. So for our testing approach, we're writing the outcomes as testable criteria, We tried to get away from that level and found that we really couldn't. There's a certain point where you have to say, does it do X? And where we've started is the outcomes are based on user needs. So instead of writing the guidelines the way it was done in the past, where we start with the guideline and then write the success criteria and then write the techniques and then write the methods, we reverse the process. So we're starting with user needs and then saying, what are the outcomes that would have to happen to support that user need? And then we can write the tests. And then we work through the technical details. And then finally, we write the guideline as the very last step. So we're starting with user needs and then doing the testing early. The testing in WCAG 2, the testing is by page. But in WCAG 3, we're looking at testing as scoped either by the site or by the product, like a mobile app would be an example of a product that would be covered under WCAG 3. So a view is the equivalent of a page or a screen. And then the process is the steps needed to complete a task. And this can go over many views. So we're trying to move more toward a what is the user trying to accomplish and measuring that rather than how much alt text is there, for example. We still have that, but we are moving more toward a task orientation. So we have the atomic tests, which are the tests that we do today. So pretty much the accessibility tests you do today will continue to be the accessibility tests you do after WCAG 3 is finished. The scoring will change, but the tests are going to be very similar. But then we also want to add the layer of user experience testing. And we're having a very hard time naming these types of tests. So people would have good ideas of how to name them, they would be welcome. So finally, you're going to go through, you're going to test your product, you're going to score the individual tests, and then you start looking at an overall score. And the overall score has two levels or two parts to it. And again, this is how we're trying to solve that equality problem between different types of disabilities. So you need an overall score to reach bronze level, and that's the minimum requirement is bronze. And then you will also need to have a score in each disability functional category. And we have a separate group that are working on a standardized functional category to support WCAG 3, but also other W3C specifications as well. So in order to meet bronze, you need to have no critical errors, and I'll talk more about critical errors in a minute, and then that it meets the score. We're going to, one of the things we found in the research as well, going back a little bit, is that people don't understand A, AA, AAA. Most people, when you say, oh, my site meets level A, they think that's the best. And internationally, it doesn't scale well because there are plenty of languages that don't even have the letter A. But everyone understands bronze, silver, gold from the Olympics. So if you say we meet bronze level, everyone knows you're good, but you could be better. And that's what we want to give, is to give more motivation for organizations that really want to commit to accessibility, give them a reason to do it. So we're still working on the silver and the gold levels. What I hope is that the silver level will be oriented toward inclusive design and usability testing, and the gold level will be more oriented toward organizational maturity models. But we do not have agreement on that, and we're certainly looking for people that want to help us get there. We particularly need more help working on the inclusive design and user experience level. Okay. Next slide. And I'll try to go faster, sorry. Okay, so the critical errors are any accessibility problem that stops the user from being able to complete a process. And right now we have 3. These are items that stop a user if they exist at all, anywhere in the view, like flashing, like keyboard traps, audio that you can't pause. Then the second one is a new one. these are the errors that when they're located within the process means the process can't be completed. So an example would be an icon in the navigation that doesn't have alt text. What we want to do is be able to give organizations the ability to have small errors without failing. But we have to make sure that any errors that really are important do fail. And that's why we've gone to the critical error approach. So, and you'll see in different guidelines, there's a variety of scaling so that things that are more important are more likely to have a critical error. Things that are lesser importance we're giving more of an option to have more errors in there, so that it's not blocking people from being able to say, yes, we meet this guideline. And then the third one is a very challenging one, and we're still working out the details on it. But these are errors that when they're aggregated across a view or across a process cause a failure. And this is really where it has a lot of impact on people with cognitive disabilities or pain disabilities, fatigue disabilities. They're not covered by the current WCAG guidelines because it's so individually oriented toward a pass-fail. So people that have disability needs that are involved in overall fatigue aren't handled. So this is an area that we're still working on, and but I think is very exciting and essential. Next slide, Pete. The point system has 3 levels. So first you test the views and the processes. These are the atomic tests, the tests you do today. And then you use that to assign an outcome score. And this is how we're averaging it. You know, we're bringing different types of testing together so that they can be compared and averaged in a mathematically valid and fair way. And then you calculate the overall score, as I said, by the site or the product, and then by the disability category. And then finally is you decide whether or not it meets bronze level. Go ahead, Pete. So the benefits. Sites can have a small percentage of accessibility bugs as long as they're not a critical error for people with disabilities. This makes it possible for large websites to pass because we know, no one gets 100% in WCAG. And as one of the people mentioned in one of the questions that we'll address later, this becomes a real problem for people who have legal issues. So having a few small problems on a really good site, we want that to pass. So another advantage is the tests can vary by guideline and method, so the most appropriate test can be used. Right now in WCAG 2, all you have is binary true-false statements. And that's not, it doesn't begin to cover the variety of disability needs that people have. Then we can include more needs of people with disability that were previously too hard to measure. And then for people who are testing just for conformance, if you encounter a critical error, you can stop testing that guideline because you know it fails. So some testers are reporting that it speeds up the conformance testing process. Now, obviously, if you're testing to find all of the bugs, that's not going to help you. But for people that do test, just does this pass, it's going to speed up your process. We're finding so far, again, the devil's in the details, but that's our direction. Next.
All right. So good segue here. So I know I've been seeing a lot of questions come in the QA form. So let's just give Jeanne and I a second to take a look at these. Jeanne, can you see the Q&A also?
I can. And okay. Actually, I was just picking that I would answer a question from Matt. Because he's asking, will the new grading system help to make WCAG standards more understandable for those with no accessibility knowledge? It seems the current pass-fail system in place now has been weaponized by lawyers and creates a lot of resentment and frustration. So as I think I said, we are trying to make it, we're trying to address that weaponization. At least that's one of my personal goals. I mean, there are a variety of people who work on this standard coming from many different aspects of the accessibility community. So, but that's certainly one of the things that I've seen it weaponized, and I would like to see that end. I don't think the grading system itself is going to make it easier for beginners to understand, because right now this grading system is more complicated. But what I hope is that as we develop it more and we get into future drafts, then the accessibility tool companies are going to start stepping in, and many of them are involved in the work already, but they will start building tools that will make it easier to understand and will bypass all of the complexities of the grading system and just say, here's your score. But right now, it's definitely more confusing.
All right. I'll take the next one, Jeanne, and let me know if you agree with my answer here. So this is from Abdullah Al Khalifi. I'm saying, hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that. Hi, our company is currently exploring implementing accessibility technologies for our website and app. Should we consider waiting until WCAG 3.0 comes out, or can we proceed with the current standard? So I would say they shouldn't wait, even though 2.x is not perfect. It's, don't wait until 3.0 comes out. There's a lot of good information out there that you can, people have written blogs that you can to supplement what's on the official WCAG website. So I would say do the best you can with what's out there now, and then you'll be more ready for 3.0.
And we will provide a migration information for people who are currently at anywhere on the 2 spectrum that want to move to 3 once it's finished. But absolutely do not wait, particularly in the US. Your risk of legal action is quite high these days. So you certainly do not want to wait to implement accessibility. Go with 2.0. And, I'm saying a lot of criticism of 2.0 because I'm trying to explain why we're making the changes we're making. But 2.0 is a very good standard. It has worked very well for 12 years. It has put accessibility on the map around the world. So I want to be a little more cautious about it. Does have its flaws because that's what it's a major upgrade. We're trying to identify and fix the flaws, but it's still very good, and you certainly should use it today.
Okay. So one more question. This is from C189198. Jeanne, I guess I'll put this to you. What are you doing for folks who are dyslexic? I've done tons of user research here.
So we haven't focused a lot on that, and we would love to have a conversation about the research and recommendations and where we can go. It's definitely in our next steps of, maybe not for the next draft, which right now we're trying to get out for May, but probably the draft after that would be one where we could start really digging in and putting in a lot of new guidelines for specific disabilities. So I'm pretty sure my contact information is on the last slide. So please definitely drop me a note and let's talk about the research and where we could see it fitting in.
Great. And then one more, I can take this. So Kirk asks, can you suggest any resources that exist for recruiting people with disabilities for testing our site and apps, remote or in person? I definitely can, Kirk. I've done a lot of usability testing with people with disabilities. There's definitely recruiters out there who are better than others, and there's organizations you can talk to, blind organizations and other groups. So if you want to send me a note, I can follow up with you offline. Let's see here. Jeanne, you want to pick the next one?
Sure. There's a question from Robert Henley. Why were no criteria from the WCAG 2 operable guideline included in the first draft, such as 211 keyboard? And that one, I will say, is more accidental. It wasn't deliberate. We are trying to pick the guidelines that illustrate some of the structural changes that were important. And that was primarily around scoring. And the way different disabilities had an impact on the scoring. So we tended to pick guidelines that were multi-user disability oriented. For example, one of the things we found with headings is that headings could have had a approach that included people with cognitive disabilities, as well as the semantic aspect of supporting people who are blind. So that's why we picked that one. So we were trying to illustrate specific things. So it wasn't that we were ignoring operable for any deliberate thing. And we probably will have, now that you've mentioned it, I think I will look at that and make sure that we have an operable guideline in a future, one of the future drafts coming up.
Okay. I'll take the next one here. Let's see. I just had it and I lost it. 1 second here. Eugene, why don't you take the next one? I lost one that I wanted to do and I can't find it.
Okay, here's a hard one. Jason Cortez asks, can you speak to automated accessibility testing and how it will be impacted by the new scoring method and criteria? And this one is definitely, this is a tough one, because we've been trying different ways of approaching it. And one of the things we looked at is whether or not we could have a level, because a lot of people would like to have a level where the automated accessibility testing would let you pass. And the problem with it is that accessibility testing automation is such a rapidly moving target. And particularly as more artificial intelligence accessibility testing tools are coming on the market. I was looking at some new tools that were being developed by IBM for cognitive accessibility, testing cognitive accessibility issues. So the automation is moving very, very quickly. So we found that we could not write a separate automation level because we'd have to change it too often. And changing the base of accessibility standards, what we call the normative, the absolute required part that governments rely on, you can't change that very often. You know, there has to be a lot of thought put into any of those changes made. So we had to work around that in order to do the scoring system. We are in contact regularly with different automation tooling companies. Many of them participate. A lot of them are interested and are keeping an eye on the work. And I've spoken to a number of their organizations to talk to them about what's coming, what are the directions, what we'd like from them, when we want them to start working on putting the grading and the point system into their own tools. And so we expect to see that soon. Google, we did a prototype of the new color contrast algorithm. The researcher who worked with us closely on developing it made a testing tool. And it's obviously done by a single researcher. But then the Google Chrome team came along and they started building a WCAG 3 color contrast testing tool. And that was in, at least in the end of January, that was in one of their development builds. And they're also working on that automation. So I think we're going to start seeing more automation as the draft starts solidifying. This was our first draft and we needed to get it out and get feedback on it before we could really dig into more of the details. We needed to find out whether or not people actually like this approach. And fortunately, most people do. I mean, a lot of people have comments on the details of it, but the approach generally has had very good feedback.
So Jeanne, why don't we each take one more, and we're getting close to the top of the hour. So I'm going to take one from Al Avery. Aside from the potential legal ramifications of not having a focus on accessibility when building a website or web app, what are some business reasons we can use to promote accessibility to our stakeholders? This is a great question. So I think, you know, a lot of people do focus on the legal ramifications. They don't want to get sued. What's the least we can do so we don't get a lawsuit? at least that's better than ignoring accessibility. Obviously, it's not the best approach. I think what you need to do is really think about, the business case, and it's really looking at, just demographics, like we talked about in the first few slides about the number of folks with disabilities. And it's a huge population that if a company isn't accessible or usable, they're missing out on that revenue. And the other thing I would say too is look at the demographics. A lot of, the aging population. As we age, we unfortunately, things go, right. So it's just going to get more and more. It's just good business. It's good. It's a good UX for folks, and it's a way to make more money for these companies. That's how I would say that. All right, Jeanne, why don't we do one more, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay, I'm going to take, there's a number of questions asking about VPATs, and then also if we have regulators involved in the group. And so first, we actually do have a number of regulators who are active in participating in the group from around the world, actually. We have members of the Access Board for the US. We have members that are part of one of the EU boards, and we have a very active member who's active in Japan. So we are definitely keeping that in mind. Now, we do expect that VPATs will continue, that VPATs are probably going to evolve to match what we're doing. And we expect that to ramp up more once we work out more of the details in the point scoring system. ITI filed some very helpful and thoughtful comments on the process, so I know that they are watching and will be involved more in the future.
Okay, thank you, Jeanne. All right, so let me, we'll just kind of wrap up with some last slides here. So, hopefully you've enjoyed what you heard today, and if you want to get involved with Jeanne and her team, they definitely would love to have you. So there's a few different ways that you can help. So you can join the Silver Community Group, and the URL is there, and they have groups forming to work on new guidelines for the next draft. And then maybe that's too much of a commitment, but you're welcome to comment on future versions of WCAG 3.0 as they come out. And you can see the status at the URL there on the slide. And I'm sure you'll see it over social media as they get close to future drafts. So I want to end just by I want to thank everyone for attending our webinar. And I just want to let you know about a webinar coming up next month. I'm going to have Bill Albert say a few words about this webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Great to have you all here. It was an amazing presentation with so much great content. We do run several webinars a year. We have one coming up on May 7th that I'll be presenting, called Where is Your UX Compass Pointing? And it's a case study where we look at how we measure overall product sentiment from the lens of not just usability, but also the emotional experience, design, and brand. And it's an extension of the experience scorecard work that we sort of rolled out in the fall. So we hope you all can attend, and Shannon's going to send out some information about that. A free event, May 7th, and hope to see you all there.
All right, thank you, Bill. All right, so just want to again say thank you. If you have any questions on UX accessibility, please get in touch. You can see our email, website, and social media there. And if you need Jeanne's information, sorry, Jeanne, we didn't put it on there, but we can get that for folks too if they want to get in touch, or any of the URLs that we had on WCAG will get you in touch with Jeanne. So thank you very much for attending, and best of luck as you move forward in accessibility and user experience.